Hi, today I'm going to talk about the aggregate demand aggregate supply model. This model helps in examining the business cycle. As a reminder, the business cycle occurs when shocks cause real GDP to diverge from potential GDP. These shocks can be positive or negative, causing the business cycle to fluctuate. So our aggregate demand aggregate supply model has three components. Number one is the aggregate demand curve, which shows a relationship between price level and total spending on domestic goods. So how much is spent on domestic goods in relation to price? Number two is our short-run aggregate supply curve, which shows a relationship between price level and business plan production. So how much will the businesses change production in short term based on change in prices? And lastly, we have our long-run aggregate supply curve, which shows the potential GDP, which is a long-run equilibrium. It shows the GDP if economy is functioning at maximum capacity. So our aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. It means that as price increase, spending goes down. This is due to three factors. Number one is a wealth effect, which says that inflation causes household wealth to decrease and consumption to fall as a result. Number two is our interest rate effect, which is when prices increase, demand for money also increases, which makes interest rates go up. As a result, consumer and business investment falls since there's less profit in investing. And lastly, we have our exchange rate effect, which is when prices increase, demand for money increases, which makes interest rates go up. This will cause the exchange rate to appreciate, making imports cheaper and spending on domestic goods fall as a result. Our short-run aggregate supply curve is horizontal. This is because in short term, businesses will supply any amount of output at a given price level. This goes with the assumption that prices and wages are sticky in the short run, which means they're constant and don't change. And last year, long-run aggregate supply curve is vertical because real GDP in the long-run equilibrium is equivalent to potential GDP. In the long run, prices are flexible. Therefore, long-run aggregate supply curve shows business output when prices are flexible. And this is a diagram which shows the price level and real GDP, and our aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. Our short-run aggregate supply is horizontal, and our long-run aggregate supply is vertical. And we have our equilibrium at point A. So we have aggregate demand shocks, which is any event that impacts autonomous expenditure. Autonomous expenditure is spending that is independent of income. So changing government spending or changing investment due to perspective. A positive aggregate demand shock shifts the aggregate demand curve to the right and vice versa. We also have short-run aggregate supply shock, which is an event that causes costs to rise for the majority of businesses in the economy, which means production decreases because there's a higher cost of production now. This could be something like higher oil prices or financial crisis. Um, a, a positive short-run aggregate supply shock shifts the curve down and vice versa. So we have an example here. The oil prices increased due to a major war in the Middle East. How will this impact the Canadian business cycle and the real GDP equilibrium in the long run? So since increase in oil prices causes costs to increase for businesses in Canada, the short-run aggregate supply curve will shift upwards because this is a negative short-run aggregate supply shock, as we talked before. So now that this happened, real GDP falls and unemployment increases and production decreases. So this is a recession in our business cycle. Due to this, over the long run, wages and other costs fall also, since there is less demand for workers, and prices gradually fall due to this. After that, this causes costs to decrease for Canadian businesses again, since prices are gradually falling. And this is a positive short-run aggregate supply shock, as we talked before, and that will cause our short-run aggregate supply curve to shift back down, returning the economy to the initial long-run equilibrium. So here's a diagram that I made to make it easier to visualize. So we have price level and real GDP, and I just use like basic units of number to understand this question better. So we can see that our first equilibrium is at 0.55, and since our short-run aggregate supply curve shifts upwards, it shifts equilibrium to the 0.28. So we can see that real GDP has decreased and prices has increased. So over long run, since prices gradually fall, we can see that it shifts it back down to the short run aggregate supply number one again, and it reaches our long run aggregate supply equilibrium again at 0.55. So you can compare it with the other slide again, and it just makes it easier to visualize. That is the end of my presentation, and thank you for watching.